Good morning, class. Today we are going to start with our bell ringer, of course, and that will be right here. Okay, so your bell ringer today, based on your reading from last week and from the reading you were supposed to do for today, it will be your question is John Adams, a Federalist, only served one term as president. Why did John Adams not receive re-election? And why did the American people elect Thomas Jefferson, who was an anti-federalist, in the next election? These are very different sides of the political spectrum. So why did the American people switch from a federalist to an anti-federalist? This is similar to today going from a Republican to a Democrat. Write at least one paragraph answering this question and make sure you support your answer with facts. We will revisit this when you're done. Okay, class, first announcements, then we'll get to discussing our bell ringer. First, you have a chapter test this Friday. Don't forget that. Don't forget to study. Second off, this Friday is also homecoming, so make sure you come to the football game and make sure you show your school spirit. Third, next week we will have SGA nominations. That's Student Government Association for anybody who doesn't know. If you would like to participate in student government, please let me know. I will look into getting you a nomination and we will vote to see what your position is. All right, now break into your small groups and we're going to discuss the bell ringer for about 5 minutes and then we will start our lesson. So everybody break into your groups and I'll be walking around in case anybody has any questions. Okay. Today's lesson will be about the election of 1800. That is the transition from John Adams to Jefferson, of course. That's what you wrote your bell ringer on. Learning the objectives today, you will learn the key reasons why Jefferson was elected in 1800. You explain why Adams only served one term. It's going back to our bell ringer. And you will be able to identify the reason that the people were shifting from one side to the other. Yet again, it's all about your bell ringer. Okay, recapping from last lesson. So we talked about the American support for the French Revolution. The French Revolution was ending a monarchy and turning into a republic, the same sort of thing that America had just done, coming out from underneath British control. So of course the British were very sympathetic to the French. They supported this revolution moving to a republic because it was very similar to what they had just done. Now, neutrality in the French versus English war. Now, because France had just changed into a republic, they were very enthusiastic about spreading this. And of course, monarchies throughout Europe decided that it was not a good thing for France to be spreading these ideas in Europe. So England, being a monarchy, headed up this resistance to Napoleon and the French expansion of the Republic. And because of that, France and England were at odds at this time. George Washington decided that the best approach for America was not to get on either side of the war, not to support the French or the English, and to stay neutral. And this is what the American government decided to go with. Can anybody tell me which side the Federalists were on before neutrality was decided on, and which side the Democratic Republicans were on? This would be Adams and Jefferson leading these two parties. Anybody? Exactly. Yes. Adams and the Federalists were on the side of England. They thought that the violence of the French Revolution was possibly going to spread to America, and that they, as a ruling class of America, would be put to the guillotine just like the French king was. So they, of course, were not in support of that. Meanwhile, Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans were more on the side of France. Jefferson had been a diplomat to France in previous administrations, and he was very sympathetic to the French. Also, as we've discussed, he was very in love with the idea of a republic, especially the yeoman republic, is what he viewed as the future of America. We also talked about Adams getting elected after Washington decided not to seek a third term. Okay, during the Adams administration, he had a couple of problems that really made Jefferson and a lot of Americans see him in not a great light. First were the Alien and Sedition Acts. These were two pieces of legislation. The Alien Act restricted immigration into America extremely, actually. He did not want any French nationals coming in and spreading those ideas and possibly causing a revolt in America. The Sedition Acts were a set of legislation that made it illegal, essentially, to speak out against the president. This is something that today would not fly at all with freedom of press and stuff. And this is, in the end, why the Sedition Act was struck down as unconstitutional later on. Can anybody tell me what the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions were? Yes, exactly. The Virginia and Kentucky resolutions were written by Jefferson, the Virginia one, and Monroe, his essentially second in command of the Democratic Republican Party, and his was the Kentucky side. And these were essentially anonymous letters published denouncing the Alien and Sedition Acts and the acts of Adams and the Federalists in general. And they proposed something which became the idea of nullification. Can anybody tell me what nullification is? Yes, nullification was the idea that the states could make a piece of legislation, a law, or an executive order not apply in their state, essentially saying, we don't recognize that law at all. Okay, moving on to our new content. For today, the election of 1800. So in this election, you have Jefferson Adams, just like the beginning of the previous election. This time, what's going to happen is Jefferson is going to eke out just a little bit above Adams, just like Adams had previously against Jefferson. The difference is this time they are starting to have a true, like almost ticket, voting ticket, where they have a vice president that is with them. And this time They're trying to avoid Jefferson being the vice president of Adams, like what had happened last time. So because of this, Aaron Burr is Jefferson's vice president for this election. Because of that, everyone who voted for Jefferson also voted for Burr, because at this time you did not have a vice president and president vote. You just had 2 votes for president. And the first place guy would be the president. The second place guy would be the vice president. This is how Jefferson became Adams vice president in the first election we had after Washington. So the Federalists, they viewed, scratch that, start over. Runoff. Okay, so Jefferson and Burr, because they received the same amount of votes, ended up being tied for president technically. This is the problem that results from that style of voting, which we later on fixed with the 12th Amendment, which made a designated president and vice president vote. So because they were tied, Congress had to be the deciding vote. They ran through over 30 votes, and the Federalists would vote for Burr, and the Anti-Federalists, at this point, the Democratic Republicans, would vote for Jefferson, and they would always end up in a deadlock until Hamilton, who was a Federalist and an enemy of Jefferson in general, convinced enough of the Federalists not to vote that Jefferson would get the election. Not that he liked Jefferson that much more. It was just that he viewed Jefferson as more qualified than Burr. And with the class supremacist view of the Federalists, this made Jefferson a better candidate for president. So Jefferson's plan for America once he was elected was a true republic, like I said earlier. He wanted to take down the domestic taxes that had been put in place under the Washington Adams presidency. He wanted to lower the spending of the American government, essentially make it smaller, which is what the Republicans generally today push for, although now it is by degree instead of the extremes of spending or not spending. So he voted, his idea was a small defensive military, reduced government power in general, reduced social functions, which means things that the government is doing to aid people, such as building roads, funding hospitals, that sort of thing. He viewed that taxing the people at all was a bad idea. He also voted for a free market. This way, the products produced in America, usually raw materials such as cotton, food stocks, would be able to be sent to Europe, and they would be able to receive items, finished items from Europe. So today's assignment, follow the Symbalu links under the assignments tab on your online classroom. Click on the Jefferson and Adams, Jefferson or Adams section, and this will bring you to the primary documents for today's assignment. I will be assigning each group either Jefferson or Adams, and you guys will be reading through their both newspaper articles that they wrote as political tools against each other during the election. You will also as a group, you will read the primary sources that are given to you depending on which president you have. And you will have a short group discussion between yourselves and talk about what you guys understand, looking at their different views and such. Then I want you to follow the Canva link also in the Symbalu and make a digital poster summing up your group's conclusions on either Jefferson or Adams' thinking as far as government goes and their slander on each other. You will submit this poster to the provided submission link, which will also be in the Symbalu. And I want you guys to be prepared to discuss this tomorrow morning as your bell ringer. We will have a discussion between the different groups, deciding what exactly, so that you guys can have a discussion between yourselves. And we will look at both sides, see who you guys think was right and who was wrong, as well as a comparison of the political process back then and now. Some of the things that they said about each other would not be okay today. Today, some of that would be viewed as slander. So go ahead and start your, go ahead and enter your Symbalu link, and groups 1, 2, and 3, you guys will be doing Adams. Groups 4, 5, and 6, you will be doing Jefferson, okay? There should be 2 or 3 links for each of them, depending on which president you get. And so as far as your Canva poster goes, be creative, include a lot of pictures, do it sort of like a bullet format. Think about it as like a one-page PowerPoint that gets your point across on what your views are on both presidents and their campaign strategies.